Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and after our big video about DC last week, a new report from The Hollywood Reporter has come out exposing a lot of issues at the studio. This comes in the wake of Supergirl bombing at the box office and talks about some of the issues behind the scenes, as well as some of the broader problems at DC. Seems like history is repeating itself, and in this video, I kind of want to give it a more, hopefully a more balanced look at how these studios make films and why they're running into the same issues over and over and over. Now, if you cast your mind back to Suicide Squad, then you'll probably remember that this was marketed as this brooding and dark film before it was then cut down to be much more Marvel-like and far more comedic. There were needle drops, like them playing Eminem without me, and basically the film cut to shreds, so it was completely absent of any of the character development beyond one scene at the end. It was a major turning point in the franchise and clearly showed the studio overreach, in which they would actively derail a director's vision in order to deliver something that they thought the audience might prefer. Now, they had done something similar on Batman v Superman, and there was over 30 minutes cut from the movie. This was of course shown in the Ultimate Edition, which was released on Blu-ray, giving audiences the full cut. Though Suicide Squad also got an extended version as well, I think the main difference came down to the fact that you could still feel Snyder's hand in the theatrical release, and tonally, it was basically the same as the Ultimate Edition. Like, you watch the theatrical, you watch the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition is just the theatrical with much more scenes in it. It's a much better version, I must say that as well, and I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't, because it basically rights a lot of the wrongs in the movie. As for Suicide Squad though, it's clear they mess with the tone, feel and score, and if we do ever get the Ayer cut, I think it's going to be drastically different to what they put out there. Sort of in the same way that Zack Snyder's Justice League is a lot different to Justice League. Unfortunately, it feels like a similar thing's still happening, with there being lots of issues with the final cut of Supergirl. On the 3rd of July, The Hollywood Reporter published an exclusive deep dive titled Behind the Supergirl Bomb: Competing Cuts, Creative Differences. Written by Maurice Kidd, the piece pulls back the curtain on the troubled production of DC Studios' second film. Directed by Craig Gillespie, it opened in below projections at just $37.1 million. This put it as lower than Morbius, which was still kind of coming off the back of the pandemic. With a production budget of $186 million, early projections estimate it'll probably lose between $85 to $125 million. Now, in the aftermath of it, one of the biggest criticisms around the film was the needle drop at the end. Gillespie even came out and said they tried 45 different songs and that James Gunn had the final choice. This kind of gave a hint that there might be some internal creative clashes and some studio interference during post-production. If you've been keeping up to date with the film, then you'll probably have heard that it had over 4 official test screenings, but there were rumoured to be more. Apparently there was at least 8, which is a hell of a lot more than most movies tend to get. The film ended up going through 3 composers as well, and there was also 25 minutes cut from the film. So it did seem like it was all happening again. The article then kind of goes beyond that and talks about how they had a bake-off between competing cuts. The studio are clearly a bit dismayed by things in general, and Peter Safran has even come out and said that though the film flopped, they're still confident in their plan. So in this video, I kind of want to go through that as well, talk about the article, why this stuff happens a lot more than you'd think, and overall the position it leaves DC in, especially with the Paramount merger looming on the horizon. Now, in Gunn's defense, a studio overseeing things and making changes to bring a film to be more tonally like the rest of the franchise is not unheard of. In fact, Marvel Studios basically built their entire production line around the idea of fixing things in post. The way they shoot films is that they'll go and make it, Feige will then watch it, give notes, and then they'll go and reshoot scenes to fix or change issues with the film. When the movie comes out and does well, yeah, no one gives a shit. In fact, it makes Feige seem like a creative genius because he's basically the man that steers everything towards success. People not caring about production issues if a film does well is something that we've seen throughout cinema history. Pour exemple, Apocalypse Now was a nightmare behind the scenes and everyone thought it was going to be an absolute mess. Jaws notoriously had a very troubled production as well, and even Star Wars was just a shit show behind the scenes apparently. Tom Hardy has even admitted that when it came to making Fury Road, he thought it was going to be a disaster. However, all those movies came out and were beloved, and therefore nobody cared. That was a fucking nightmare to work on. However, if a movie comes out and it's bad or bombs, then obviously, you know, things are put under scrutiny. Marvel made their movies that way for years and years and years, but we only really started learning about it once a project started doing badly and things were brought into question. So that's what this article is doing. It details the aftermath of the production and says that filming wrapped in May 2025. Things were then put together, and unfortunately by December 2025, the first test screenings yielded only just okay results. Multiple additional screenings then followed in February and March 2026. Scores hovered in the 60s initially and improved only to the low 70s at best. This isn't good at all, and Batgirl actually scored in the same numbers before being completely put to pasture. It's far from the robust numbers that studios like to see for a summer tentpole, so in March, that quote-unquote bake-off happened. This pitted Gillespie's cut against the studio one, and the former's was roughly 11 minutes longer, with more of an emphasis on the villain Krem. The studio cut won though by a slim 2 points, which is pretty negligible, and I think you could have possibly shown it to a different audience and Gillespie's cut may have come out on top. May not have happened, but either way, the margins are very, very thin, and yeah, it's not a decisive victory. However, that cut was praised for its better pacing, song choices, and overall flow. Gillespie's version reportedly excelled in certain scenes and music cues, but that was ultimately sidelined. Apparently in the aftermath of this, post-production became a battleground, and DC apparently brought in writer Jeremy Slater, who'd worked with Gunn before on projects like Peacemaker. Gunn is also known to have written the scenes with Superman as well, which, yeah, personally I think are some of the strongest parts of the movie. But this then led to 9 days of reshoots. However, there was apparently more friction in the editing room. 2 editors worked on the film, with these being Tatiana S. Regal, who'd actually work with Gillespie on I, Tonya and Cruella. In the studio's corner was none other than Fred Raskin, who'd worked with Gunn ever since Guardians of the Galaxy, I believe. Now these then shaped the film, and it's Gunn's tone and creative choices that apparently then proved to be pretty contentious. Gunn is of course renowned for his needle drops, with that basically being his signature style. Reportedly, he pushed for a cover of Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, but this was later abandoned in favour of a cover of The Middle by Jimmy Eat World. This is of course where the biggest stunk on social media seems to have come from, with many saying it's the worst needle drop of all time, but I still stand by the Pitbull one in Aquaman. As for the best, that is of course the Have Sex song in Morbius, where Matt Smith dances about me. You'll fucking love that song. Who doesn't love that bit? That is a 10 out of 10 movie because of that scene. But yeah, there were a number of notes, lots of competing cuts, and it basically signaled that the studio wasn't confident at all in what they were putting out. Now, why this has drawn such ire on social media is because Gunn previously put out that he'd allow filmmakers the freedom to bring their visions to life. But this report makes it seem like the new DC is the same as the old DC. I think Gunn is obviously, a director with a certain style that you can see right away. Whether you like it or not, I think everyone knows his projects are typically about a messy ragtag group of anti-heroes that come together to form a quote-unquote family. Whether it's Guardians of the Galaxy, Creature Commandos, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, even the script he did for the Dawn of the Dead remake, blah blah blah, you get it. Superman did seem like it would be totally different and focused on just one character, but even that ended up just bringing in the Justice Gang. I even remember when the Supergirl trailer dropped and I was saying that I don't know how many more Guardians of the Galaxy style movies I can do, and that I don't think that tone works for everything, which I got a lot of flack for. But yeah, if you like it, it's great, but I think if you have a creative that makes a lot of the same creative choices, overseeing things with someone who isn't necessarily that kind of director, it's going to cause issues, and ultimately the person in charge is the one who's going to decide what goes out and have the most influence. Again, I do think Gunn makes good films when he's doing what he loves, which are these offbeat characters that the director can really tackle. I think other than Superman, for me, he's done some really fantastic films, and when he's doing what he does best, it's difficult to fault him. To me, anyway. But his stuff is very, very niche, and I'm not sure if it's how you build a strong foundation. It is still, a bit crazy to me that Supergirl was the second film, because I think that's, one of those projects that you say for, movie 10, at least. Now, if you watched our last video, then I am going to sound like a basic bitch again, but I think the follow-up film that you do to Superman is none other than Batman. Every Batman movie, without fail, makes at least, $600 million at least, and you do that and you have a strong second film at the very least that you can then kind of use to tease what's coming down the line. Be like, he could be meeting Superman in the next one, and then you've got 2 strong characters, strong films, and strong pillars of the universe. Third film could then lead into a Wonder Woman film, and then at the end of that you tease her, Superman and Batman meeting. But that's not what they're doing, and I'm not sure if these projects really feel aligned and that they're building to something. Even skipping out in a post-credit scene, what the fuck are you what are you doing? Like, tease the next one, sell the next one already. Instead, though, I think they all just feel like disconnected characters that exist in the same universe, will bump into each other, but they're not going to build towards anything. That's sort of what we had in the DCU before this as well, like after Justice League, and you had like Birds of Prey, Shazam, Aquaman 2, Wonder Woman 84. They were all in the same universe. You might see one of those characters pop up in another film, but it didn't really feel like we were building towards an event. And yeah, looking at what the DCU is doing next, I don't know if Clayface is going to really change things. But look, hasn't been released yet, so maybe it will. But we do know that screenplay has gone through revisions as well, and Mike Flanagan has said he's not sure what they're doing. It's kind of been taken off him, but he does hope that audiences will enjoy it. So yeah, even that we heard was like an amazing script, but they're still working on stuff, which is normal, I suppose. But say Clayface is well received, I'm not sure how much it's going to move the needle in terms of building towards a big shared universe. Like, I could make the best Seventh Seal analysis of all time, mate, but people probably aren't going to watch it. So I'm going to have to make something popular alongside that, like a House of the Dragon or a big TV show. But it just seems like DC, are begrudgingly doing these popular characters, and Gunn's more focused on doing, like, Creature Commandos Season 2. Supergirl has never had a hit film. Her first film flopped, and then The Flash flopped. So it's like, why are you using her to make the second movie? I think Marvel have also seen the writing on the wall as well post-Endgame, and have realised that they need these big events to fill seats, which is why they've gone all in on Doomsday. They're no longer continuing down the road they were down, and the worst thing is that DC should have been able to see this as well, and not make the same mistakes. All you have to do is look at your competition and see how badly their films have performed when it's not a big name character, and simply adjust for that. I think obviously Gunn has struggled with Matt Reeves' Batman being out there too, and though they're downplaying it and saying it's fine, I think anyone with a brain can realise why it might be a bit difficult to have two competing Batman films out at once. Spider-Man gets away with it with Miles Morales because it's an animated movie and built around the multiverse, but I think in the case of Batman, there may be issues that they aren't really talking about. Obviously, The Flash did it too, but again, built around the multiverse. But either way, I think these reports cement the long-standing problems at DC and Warner Brothers. They have pretty high budgets for mid-tier characters that aren't really a draw to go and see. Captain Marvel, can make $1 billion when it's between Infinity War and Endgame, but DC just don't have an event like that to really draw people in. And we saw what happened with the Marvels when it was just kind of in the ether. Even the X-Men teaser cannot save you. Personally though, I think DC's strategy of elevating lesser-known characters before creating a universe we care about itself is always going to cause these kind of issues. Even just the fact they've announced like a Mr. Terrific series in development and a Jimmy Olsen comedic mockumentary makes me think they don't understand what people will rush out to go and watch. These projects still cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and I think Paramount will just be like, why aren't we using this money to make a Batman movie? Like, if you were an investor, mate, and you had millions of dollars on the table, ask yourself, would you put it on a Batman movie or a Jimmy Olsen mockumentary TV show? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? The viewing figures tell a grim story too, with Peacemaker Season 2 having low viewership and Supergirl's second weekend being really bad as well. Which is made worse by the fact that it's also a holiday weekend and people should be going to the cinema. Plunging between a 74 to 80% drop, this puts it amongst the ranks of the worst drop-offs for a comic book film in history. The interest has evaporated quickly due to poor word of mouth and a lack of interest in general. Beyond that, they also have the fact that kids these days just do not care about this stuff. An unnamed studio head even apparently bluntly told THR, Gen Z does not care about superhero movies. That genre belongs to the millennials, those old fucking bitches. And to be fair, I can totally understand why. Like, if you count the X-Men as part of the MCU now, which they basically are, because, yeah, Hugh Jackman's in the movies, then these franchises are basically older than most of them have been alive. It's kind of like their dads' and grandparents' movies. I remember being a kid as well, and my granddad was always like, I love cowboys and Indians. Probably can't say that now, granddad used to say. That Native Americans used to go, I love cowboy and Indian movies. And I just never got into it. Looking back at the Western, there was like millions and millions and millions of those movies. Well, not millions, but a lot of movies, and I just didn't care. I think that's a similar thing to what's happening here, and we see this across the board with music, film, TV shows, and everything. The whole point of being a teenager is you rebel against what your parents like, so I just don't know if they've got that interest. Plus, like, you've got to watch and catch up on like 300 projects at this point, and it's a bit overwhelming. Audience polling and exit data from Supergirl also reportedly reflected this demographic disconnect. Now, the June release timing also pit the film against 3 strong contenders. Those were Toy Story 5 and Obsession and Backrooms. They were aimed towards more smaller core audiences like families, Gen Z, horror lovers, smaller people with smaller groups, rather than trying to be like, everyone should come see this movie like most superhero films do. I do also wonder if Gunn's hands are a bit full as well. His dual role as a filmmaker and CEO must be an absolute nightmare, and no modern precedent exists for someone balancing hands-on directing with overseeing an entire slate. Especially at this scale. The guy writes his own scripts, is heavily involved with casting, editing, and then promoting the films as well. Plus, if he's getting involved doing all that stuff on Supergirl too, it's going to be a lot of spinning plates. He has to have a hand on the business side too, and yeah, when he's picking what projects to announce, reading scripts and stuff, it's mental he can even do it. Like, I used to do everything at the channel, but even now I've hit a point where I just cannot have a hand on everything. And this is a small YouTube channel. I just don't know how many people are built for that level of pressure, so obviously the quality is going to suffer. Now, looming over everything, the dreaded beast on the horizon is the massive acquisition of Warner Bros. By Paramount. The THR article explicitly flags the anxieties of this as being a major challenge alongside Supergirl's failure. Corporate uncertainty often leads to risk-averse decisions, and you can get budget cuts or leadership shakeups. Articles like this don't help either, and any exec looking to push Gunn out will be able to point out the performances so far and things like this to lay home their point. Honestly, I also think Gunn was a bit stupid going after the trades. You might have remembered they did a report where they were like, Adria or Jonah and a couple of others are in the running for a role in Man of Tomorrow, and rather than just not responding, he said it was fake and debunked it. The trades even had to back each other up, and it looked dumb when she was announced as being in the film a couple days later. Let's be honest, mate. Journalists are petty, and I think the trades are probably going to be out for him now, which is how reports like this end up materialising in the first place. So you could have the media against him, and if the money and audience aren't there, Ellison could prioritise different strategies when it comes to HBO Max integrating with Paramount+. Due to the return on the last 15 DC films as well, he might even question the viability of expensive superhero projects when they really don't have to make them. Historically, mergers and acquisitions disrupts creative pipelines, and executives focus on integration rather than bold bets, which is what Gunn basically likes to do. He's shown numerous times he likes to take less established characters, and because of that, I just can't see them gelling. Even if the stuff they're putting out to the public says they're invested in the direction DC are going. So while Gunn is stifling filmmakers' creativity in terms of Gillespie, he could be getting his own creativity stifled too. Unfortunately, the Supergirl saga feels depressingly familiar, and we have a studio repeating patterns that have damaged DC and Warner Bros. For over a decade. What we've seen time and time again is a studio storming ahead with no real plan in sight and then getting poor test scores and completely shitting the bed. Batgirl was cancelled because of them, Shazam 2 got mediocre once as well and was then reworked, Snyder's films, Ayer's Suicide Squad, they all had this over-reliance on test scores to dictate creative decisions and push the direction, which led to them trying to fix things in post, and it just was a total mess. Director's vision was completely compromised, and in the end it led to an underwhelming release. When the hero isn't a bankable name as well, I think you're just asking for trouble. You're putting the cart before the horse in general and just rolling into production on this stuff and asking if you can make it without even asking if you should. It just repeats the era of prioritising release schedules and corporate momentum over quality and if people even care. Hell, if you go back to the original DCU announcement, it's mental how many of those projects haven't come to fruition. Waller, Booster Gold, Paradise Lost, The Brave and the Bold, Booster Gold again probably, The Authority, none of them being made. They're all nowhere to be seen while other characters are being announced because they seem to have resonated with people. But how big is the audience? Let's be real though, that's why Mr. Terrific and Olsen are getting stuff. It's because they were in Superman and people liked them and responded to them. But the plan is already totally different, and it's like, what was the point of announcing this stuff in the first place? I think they're just desperate to try and build something without having any idea what audiences actually want them to build, what Gunn wants, and also what the studio wants. In essence, they're just repeating the cycles of hype, followed by creative compromise, audience rejection, and external corporate pressures, which undermines the very reason that Gunn was hired to come in and reset things. The article does try and hammer home as well that despite the setbacks, the DC core strategy remains intact in that they'll build out lesser known characters. But I just don't know whether audiences will invest in this wider universe if their flagship entries are faltering. It's even been announced that Gunn's contract could be up as early as this year, and if he's out then it's going to be exhausting for fans to see new leadership come in once more. But then, I also don't know what else the higher-ups can do, I don't know if they can continue on this path. The studio cannot afford to keep losing hundreds of millions of dollars every single release, so I feel like the hierarchy of power is about to change again. However, in doing that, the cycle is just going to keep happening. I think this report will also put off other directors from working with DC as well, because no one wants to come in and have their vision compromised and then for the studio to throw them under the bus. You might remember that Gunn said they'd spoken to Ben Affleck about directing for the studio, and he said he wasn't really interested in doing what they were doing. So I don't know if this is going to encourage more people to get involved, and yeah, I'm just kind of burned out by the whole thing, and I hope we don't end up in 2037 in the exact same position as we are now. Whew, anyway, let me know your thoughts below. I don't know how often I'm going to do these kinds of videos. I just saw that report, made sense to build off last week's video, and yeah, crazy that we're kind of going through it all again. But I hope to see you on the next one, and please hit the thumbs up, and also make sure you leave a comment with all your thoughts below. Huge thank you for sitting through this video too. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, peace.